got ourselves a very interesting slate for week number 13 where we have a couple of stud running backs we are going to want to use as often as possible. Also, one under-salaried running back and Austin Eckler who will want to use a whole lot, but not a whole lot elsewhere, especially at quarterback. It's pretty tough to find guys you actively want to use, games you really want to stack. There are a lot of paths to failure for most games on this slate. So what we're going to do today is break down those games, break down where we can actually be kind of okay at quarterback and who we're prioritizing at the oh-so-delicious running back position. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, tough week for week 13 slate. How you doing today?
I mean, it sounds like you're more into it than I am because I wouldn't use the word delicious.
No.
You use the word delicious to describe running
delicious
backs.
Running backs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are
like
three we only use three.
Yeah,
I'm okay
so
having 80 to 90% exposure to all three and just saying F it to everything else.
Yeah.
Like that's why it's a delicious thing, because like I actually can fill out a lineup with players I don't hate, whereas the other positions, that's a really dicey proposition.
Yeah, I was like preparing the last of my notes for the podcast, which I always conclude with player picks.
Mm-hmm.
I was about like 10 after 9, and I was like, all right, I got plenty of time. All I got to do is fill out tight end and defense. And it took me up until 10 a.m. to figure that out because tight end is so bad.
I think that most of my afternoon yesterday was spent figuring out quarterback because there are two quarterbacks who I like two. There are others I can talk myself into, but there are two who I like, Justin Herbert and Ryan Tannehill. I think they're fine. Yeah. But like everyone else, it's me talking myself into them. And that's uncomfortable because like, as we've talked about a lot, my process for lineup building begins at game stacks, and game stacks include quarterbacks. I mean, not always, you can do mini stacks obviously too, but like that's where I start my lineup, and like, it's tough. So we've talked about this a couple of times this year, but I think this is a week where I just get different combinations at running back and kind of see what fits after that, which is really uncomfortable for me. And I'm not a huge fan of building things that way.
Yeah, I go through and make notes on every game before I really dig in and look at salaries. I try not to look at salaries too much because I always hate deciding things based on salary. And I talk myself into players who I think should be a little higher, or talk myself out of players who should be a little lower, or who maybe don't rate out the best on like a median value standpoint. But I just realized, like, as I was going through every single game, I was like, there's a problem with this game. There's a problem with this game. And it was more, I need to figure out offenses I like than actual game stacks, which we've had like 1 or 2 weeks similar to this throughout the year. But it's game stacks don't really seem that prominent. It's probably going to be more mini stacks. And sometimes we talk about, is this a 2 quarterback game, a 1 quarterback game, maybe a half quarterback game. Right. There aren't really any games where I want to play both quarterbacks as your traditional full-on shootout.
Let me look here. I don't think there are any games. I think you're right. There are 0 games in which I want to use.
The closest thing I think might be
Rams-Cardinals.
Either Rams-Cardinals or weirdly Saints-Falcons. I think you could maybe make the case. I don't really love Matt Ryan, but it's probably the second closest game to that.
I think Rams-Cardinals is like 1.25 quarterbacks if we're just going to go with the system. It would be a firm.
But there's not a firm one.
No, that's why it's 1.25, because I can't put like, it's like 0.75 Goff and 0.5 Kyler. If Kyler were healthy, he'd be a healthy one on this list.
Yeah.
But like, he's not. Like, that's not reality. So I can't waste time talking about that. So I think that one is probably the most traditional game stack for me for this week. But like, outside of that, I mean, there are other options. I think that like my favorite lineup I've built so far is either Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, and no bring back, which is frightening, or Ryan Tannehill, and then you go to like Dalvin Cook as your running back, to get the Titans exposure, but then also get the high salary running back in there. Like it's an uneasy week for sure. So with that said, and so much confidence and so much hype around this slate, don't forget to enter the Week 13 FanDuel Podcast Network Listener League. Great pitch, Jim. You did it. As always, it is a $5 entry with 3 entries max. It is rake-free. That means FanDuel makes nothing off of this contest. All the entries go back to you, the listeners. To enter, go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. That's FanDuel.com/league/listener league. You can also get a link to it in the podcast posts up on numberFire.com for the Week 12 recap if you're listening on YouTube right now, or the Week 13 preview if you listen to this after it has already been posted up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Speaking of the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, as always, we have twice weekly NFL podcasts. Tomorrow, we're going to have a UFC podcast via Austin Swaim for this weekend's card. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And as always, if you like what you hear, leave a rating and review because those do help us out a ton. Slate overview for this week. I think there are 2 things for me. It's finding which quarterbacks suck the least and prioritizing the running backs. And that's tough because I like all 3 of Henry, Cook, and Eckler pretty equally. I think I'd put Eckler 1 once you consider his salary, but they're all really good plays. And then what do I do after that? Do we get Devontae Booker in place of Josh Jacobs? What transpires beyond that? Which of the other guys do I decide I like? That's the big decision for me. So figuring out quarterback and prioritizing running back. What about for you, Brandon? What are the big keys for this slate?
Yeah, I mean, we always have really the same primary keys. So I will go to my defaults. What do we do with the high salaried receivers? Because there are a few who are enticing. We have Davonte Adams. His salary is $9,500. We know what his ceiling can be in a single game. And then kind of playing off that, we have DK Metcalf, a full $1,000 lower in salary, but do we trust the Giants to keep pace? Probably not with Colt McCoy. And there are reasons to be worried about the Seattle offense overall and kind of maybe a change of pace over the past 2 weeks, literally a change in pace, but also a dip in pass rate. So, I mean, Davonte could be the lone receiver who has that kind of slate altering upside. And we're always intrigued by that with running backs. If, it's Dalvin Cook and nobody else, we get intrigued. So, I mean, I think one thing you have to do is figure out how we're going to handle Davonte. If A.J. Brown and what is, the de facto best shootout, of the week, can he really put up a big game? So I think one thing that we need to make sure we do is give at least proper consideration to the receivers. And if we stick to the running backs, which I'm sure we both will, that's fine. But I always feel a little uneasy overlooking and just kind of saying I'm not going to be able to get to Davonte Adams because there are 2 backs at 10,000 plus I want to play. So I want to throw that out there as always.
And I think that if we do get Devontae Booker in there for Josh Jacobs, that opens up quite a bit. He's $6,000. It's not like he's free because the slate was posted later because of all the COVID stuff. So they knew that Josh Jacobs might be the lead back. It's not like he's a free square, but you would open up a lot at $6,000 given his situation, given the workload he's gotten. You and Josh Jacobs healthy this year. So I think that is definitely a plus. So
one thing that helps a little bit is that there are some really low salaried receivers who are quite justifiable, and then there's not a whole lot of reason to spend up at tight end. So
basically Travis Kelce and George Kittle aren't on the slate. And George Kittle's not healthy. That's kind of the check mark you have for spending up at tight end.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. So
all right, let's talk about some injuries here, and obviously not an injury, but the Texans will be without Will Fuller and Bradley Roby for the rest of the year. They both tested positive for a banned substance and were suspended 6 games. They also did designate David Johnson to return from IR, meaning he should be back this week. On the other side, the Colts activated Jonathan Taylor off of the COVID list. He missed last week's game, but we were kind of at least into him entering that one before he went on the COVID list. We'll discuss how we're viewing this game in the bookmakers. Hurt his ankle in week 12, missed practice Wednesday. Nelson Aguilar also missed practice on Wednesday. We don't know if Josh Jacobs will play this week yet, but just for a second, let's assume that he does not, or that he does not. How high would you be on Devontae Booker if Jacobs sits?
He's going to be a tough one to figure out because he can get targets, and we've seen them get him some work like in the red zone. He had a 2-touchdown game 3 games ago. We always kind of want to make sure that our value running backs have somewhat of a path to a ceiling, and Devontae Booker, with the ability to catch passes, kind of does have like a semblance of a ceiling. So I would be higher on him than a lot of value backs. I don't think, though, that I need to talk myself into ranking him number 1 at the expense of, well, now I can play Davonte and not have to worry about Derrick Henry because I can play Devontae Booker and Davonte Adams. I don't think I'd get to that point with him.
I mean, the double Davonte is always attractive, but I think that he'd still be 4th on my list. Like, that's his ceiling, is ranking 4th for me, because Henry, Cook, and Eckler are going to be ahead of him. Yeah, just especially because Eckler's only $1,000 more expensive, which is outrageous. Yeah. So like Booker's cap is 4th, but like you said, he can get receiving work. We've seen him get some goal line stuff, and like we know he's probably gonna be the guy for Las Vegas. And he's also facing the Jets, which never hurts. So I would say Booker probably graded as being my number 4 running back on the slate behind Henry, Cook, and Eckler. And I feel pretty good about putting him 4 above the rest of the field at this point. Daniel Jones missed practice on Wednesday with a hamstring injury and seems on the wrong side of questionable. We'll talk about the Seahawks and the implications of this later on. But if Jones sits, are we just avoiding all Giants at that point?
Yeah, I mean, there are some, like Sterling Shepard is 56. He's got a lot of work.
He's 56 because that's the maximum number of receiving yards he can get.
That's true. But I mean, you want to talk like great matchups. It's receivers against the Seahawks, and he's getting a lot of work. But as much as we are not necessarily fans of Daniel Jones, this is a big downgrade.
Yeah, like, if he were to play, Evan Engram at 6,000 would be definitely an option. Yeah. But like, if not, that's too high for tight end. So hopefully Daniel Jones can go, and hopefully he gets in a limited session Thursday, Friday, and we can actually use Evan Engram. But I think, as things stand right now, it's pretty grim there if Colt McCoy starts. Kyler Murray was limited due to his shoulder issue in Wednesday's practice. We'll talk about them in the trend section. The Falcons got both Julio Jones and Todd Gurley back at practice on Wednesday after they sat out week 12. The problems that they're facing the Saints, they're playing good defense right now. They are playing slow on offense. It's also a repeat divisional matchup for the second time in 2 or 3 weeks. So are you going with the Falcons here in this weird spot with Julio likely being back?
Well, we know that Matt Ryan is significantly better in games with Julio Jones. So it would make me a lot higher on the offense. However, with Taysom Hill on the other side, like, the Saints can kind of just slow down a game, run the ball a lot, although Atlanta does rate out really well against the rush. But, there are definitely paths to this game being a shootout, but it's going to be really hard to buy into the idea of a shootout with Taysom Hill at quarterback.
I think that Julio playing would increase my allure in Taysom Hill, just because it might make them a little bit more aggressive on offense, the Saints. So I think that Hill is a fine play regardless, but I think that he'd be a better play if Julio plays.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen him throw downfield a little bit, with some deep shots. The issue is, like, is this going to be a traditional shootout in any capacity with Taysom Hill at quarterback? Probably not.
Right.
I think Michael Thomas at 7,200, I think, is his salary. He would be interesting because the 7,000 range of receivers
it's terrible,
pretty bad. But he does get somehow, and he gets such a high target share that he does have some volume from Taysom Hill.
Yeah,
12 and 6 targets. So I think he's interesting. I think this game is one to keep an eye on, but probably not stack up with a lot of confidence.
I would say too, with the Saints from an offensive philosophy perspective, you probably should throw last week out just because it was such a weird circumstance. The better signal from a usage and a game plan perspective will be that game against the Falcons. So I think that that's encouraging for Taysom Hill specifically and Michael Thomas But also, I hope Julio plays because that would make them better options. Adam Thielen is expected back for the Vikings after a false COVID test last week. Never really got word on why he had to sit, even if it was a false positive, but I don't know, whatever. On the other side, the Jags are starting Mike Glennon for the second consecutive game, but DJ Chark and Chris Conley were able to get in limited practices on Wednesday, so they may be able to return. I'm sorry, Colin Johnson. I wish I could go back at you, but, oh well. We'll touch more on this in the bookmaker section. The Lions still did not have Kenny Golladay at practice on Wednesday. DeAndre Swift was limited again, so still not fully clear of concussion protocol. Interim head coach Darrell Bevell said the team wants to be faster on offense, though, but they're facing the Bears, likely without Golladay. So let's assume that Swift does play. Would you be in on any Lions here?
I think Swift would be interesting at 68, especially he's sandwiched between Austin Eckler, who should be very popular, and Kenyan Drake, who I think is, once again, justifiable. So I think he would be an interesting play. The line I would have most interest in, though, is actually TJ Hawkinson. I think he might be the best process play at tight end. His role's actually been quite good. I'm not going to spend up at tight end often. He's only 6,100 in terms of his salary, so I think that he's very justifiable. But I'd still be kind of low on this offense because we know it's not the same offense without Kenny Golladay.
I think the good thing here is that Akeem Hicks missed practice again on Wednesday for the Bears. He's kind of like the main catalyst for that defense, outside of Khalil Mack, obviously, but the main catalyst for that defense being what it is. And they did legit give up, it seemed like, on Monday night. And, it's within the range of outcomes that happens again. So, like you said, Swift is definitely in play. Hawkinson, I think that I'd agree with you there. And also, I don't hate the mini stack options between David Montgomery and Allen Robinson. So, I'm not going to use a quarterback in this game, but I could see myself having mini stacks here with Montgomery Swift or Montgomery Hawkinson, Swift Allen Robinson,
Montgomery Swift sounds like a comic book villain or something.
We'll work on that. I think that we should get that in the works.
This game, though, if you look at the past 5 weeks on plays with between a 20 and 80% win probability, if you combine the pace, this game's third on the main slate out of 11. Second in pass rate. So I do like this game quite a bit.
Are you going to use a quarterback here or no?
Probably not. I think Trubisky's a little interesting, though. We know he always throws 3 touchdowns against the Lions.
Friends don't let friends use Trubisky, and I consider you a friend, so I'm going to have to...
Well, I would be more interested in using Trubisky than Stafford without Golladay.
Oh, yeah, 100% agree on that, but I just rather use neither. Tua Tagovailoa was limited in practice again on Wednesday, and Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald said the team had some level of optimism that Tua would be able to play this week. The Dolphins may also get Myles Gaskin back after he was able to practice again last week and again on Wednesday. So let's assume Gaskin's back. I think that the plus for Gaskin is that we saw this with Christian McCaffrey. He got the week of practice, then sat, and then had an additional week of practice before he came back. We didn't get that with Austin Eckler, but I think that's actually a plus for guys coming back from injury. Davonte Adams, same thing earlier this year. So would you be in on Gaskin, and does anybody else here fit your process depending on whether we get Fitz or Tua?
Gaskin would be very intriguing at 5,500. They are 11.5-point favorites. That's a little bit scary, but we know how good his role has been throughout the season. If he's healthy, I don't see why they would not give him that kind of role. But even at 5,500, I think there's some path to a ceiling. The issue is, can he really get you 20 if he is limited at all? But then as far as the quarterbacks go, I mean, I love Tua, but I'd rather have Ryan Fitzpatrick because he just throws the ball so much to Devontae Parker, who I would love. His target share is insane right now without Preston Williams. So I like him kind of regardless at 6,800. But those would be the two I'd key on.
Devontae's tough for me just because that Bengals offense is so bad. And at wide receiver, I kind of need the situation. That's why I never use Allen Robinson as much as I should because I can't have faith that it's going to be a shootout. And that bothers me. And that's kind of where I'm at with Devontae Parker. He's kind of in that, he's almost the same salary as him too. He's kind of in the Allen Robinson mold where I don't like the game, therefore it's hard for me to like that player. And that's not fair. because like I do miss out on good games as a result of that. But I think that's our Matt Parker. But with Gaskin, like before the injury, he had 24 adjusted opportunities per game. He had 36% of the teams.
Opportunity?
Oh, sorry. Carries plus 2x targets, because a target is worth twice as much a carry on FanDuel. Thank you. 36% red zone share for Gaskin in that time, and they've been more run heavy with Tua in there. So if we get Tua with Gaskin, like the rushing volume for Gaskin could be really good. So I think Gaskin is not like a great option, but someone I would be willing to use, I would say.
I mean, if Gaskin comes back and gets his early season role, he's a great play at 5,500. I just I don't know if they need to give him that if they're favored by 11.5. They don't probably need to like throw him.
The good thing is they're in the playoff race, so they're not going to let up. I think that's beneficial.
That was the one thing. Like they have reasons to win, so
Also, go Dolphins, man! This is awesome. I love that they're like contending. This is cool.
As a childhood Dolphins fan, I might get back on the train.
Yeah, just revive the old hats. Like I think they're wearing some throwback unis again this month. So
those are the best uniforms in football, I think.
I think they're wearing the aqua ones at some point. It might be this weekend. If they are, bump up Gaskin more. This one might be nothing, but worth noting that Jonnu Smith has practiced Wednesday with a knee injury. We're pretty desperate to find low salary tight ends, and Anthony Firkser is $4,600. Would you go at Firkser if Jonnu were to sit?
Yeah, probably. I mean, good game environment. He's been fairly involved, all things considered. So, again, Darren Waller, his salary is $7,000. I am kind of over Darren Waller. He just doesn't do enough with his targets. Other than that, I don't think any tight end really has the shot to change the slate. So Firkser would be in play for me.
I think for me, Firkser and Kyle Rudolph are the two guys to monitor here. Irv Smith in his practice again on Wednesday. If we get Rudolph with no Irv Smith, fire away on Rudolph. If we get Firkser with no Jonnu, fire away on Firkser. So those are the two guys to keep an eye on. If we get neither, then it's probably Jordan Akins at 52 as like the main low salary guy. But I want to spend as little as possible, and it's possible that Firkser or Rudolph could give me the possibility to do so. So I'm keeping a close eye on them. Let's move into our trends discussion here for week number 13, starting off with the Green Bay Packers. They're hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. This spread has been tightening, which is a good thing for stacking. It opened at 9.5. It is now down to 8 over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Brandon, you're talking about this Packers offense with everybody being healthy, and there's just a lot of mouths to feed. What do you see here?
Yeah, look, a few games on the slate are somewhat stackable, but as I already said, I'm kind of more drawn into individual offenses, one of which is the Packers. Team's getting healthier. Primarily, to me, the biggest shift is with their wide receiver 2, Allen Lazard, back in action. I've mentioned in passing, I might have done a trend on it, I don't actually know, but how this team looks with Davonte Adams and how it affects Aaron Jones, but it's even a little bit more different now with Lazard back because that takes away some of the secondary and tertiary targets, and then they go to Allen Lazard. So I wanted to dig in, look at this team, and it's a small sample of 3 games, but I think it's, as you would state, the most predictive, sample to look at. So the most relevant sample is the word I was looking for. Well, I mean, I was going to effectively quote you, but then I forgot which word you actually used. It didn't go well. I set myself up for failure. But we have 3 games with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Davonte Adams, and Allen Lazard healthy. It's not a huge sample, but again, it's very relevant. In these 3 games, Aaron Rodgers been pretty good. 27 FanDuel points per game, 295 passing yards per game, 3.7 passing touchdowns per game. That works out to 0.42 passing net expected points per drop back, which is 3 times the NFL average in efficiency. It's actually back up to 0.14 after a very rough week, had it down to 0.13 for a little bit until yesterday's game. I should say Wednesday's game. The Eagles are 15th in adjusted pass defense, so I'm not particularly worried. And then as for the skill position players, Davonte Adams has a 30.6% target share. So you can round that up to 31% in these games with 119 air yards per game, 11.3 targets per game, 2 downfield targets per game, so passes traveling at least 16 yards from the line of scrimmage, 2.3 red zone targets per game. So that's an elite workload. He's an elite player. Allen Lazard has a 12.6% target share in this span, which is not great, but it's kind of what we're looking at after Davonte Adams gets his. He has 1.7 combined high leverage targets, so red zone and downfield targets combined. 4.7 overall targets per game in the sample, but had 6 targets last week with Marquez Valdes-Scantling banged up. There's a chance he's a little bit more featured even because Davonte Adams faces Darius Slay, who should shadow Adams, but is maybe a little bit overrated based on the stats I've seen from him this year. Next up in target share is Aaron Jones at 10.8%, which works out to 4 targets per game, followed by Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 10% with no targets last week, Robert Tonyan 9%. So I think to me what this says is we're not in love with a lot of quarterbacks, but I think Aaron Rodgers is in a very good spot, and we have seen him produce with his relevant players healthy. So I think Aaron Rodgers gets bumped up quite a bit this week. So does Davonte Adams. Of course, the salary is prohibitive, and it's not like we really need to nobody needs to tell you to play Davonte Adams. But I think that with wide receiver being what it is, he's very much in the conversation for changing the slate. And I think Allen Lazard is in a very good spot here based on what I've said. As for the backfield, Aaron Jones has averaged 22.3 adjusted opportunities per game. Jamal Williams has 13.7 in this sample. For context, the 22.3 adjusted opportunities for Aaron Jones is about the same full season rate for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which, we like Edwards-Helaire in an offense, but we don't really prioritize him. So I'm kind of starting to be down on Aaron Jones like I was last year because Jamal Williams gets enough work and this offense just flows through Davonte Adams whenever he's healthy. But, again, like I said, I'm high on this passing offense. Rodgers at 8,500, I think, is one of the few quarterbacks who can just sort of, again, change the slate. Allen Lazard at 5,600 is very intriguing to me. But I think as much as anything, I don't want to chase Aaron Jones too much at 8,400. So any thoughts on this offense? Are you in on Aaron Jones? We already talked a little bit about prioritizing Davonte Adams. And, Allen Lazard, our boy, how does he stack up among the values? Any thoughts here?
So I think that I agree with you where Lazard is in play. I think that Jones is oversalaried, and I think that as a result of that, you can't make him a great option, despite the fact that it's objectively a pretty good matchup. The one thing I will say in favor of Aaron Jones is that I looked at the most relevant sample for each back on the slate, and for me with Aaron Jones, that was with Davonte and Jamal Williams healthy. So it doesn't include the games. It's not looking at narrowing it down to Lazard, but it does give me a 6-game sample. Yeah. In that time, Jones has 24.3 adjusted opportunities per game and 33% of the team's red zone opportunities. Those numbers are both better than what Nick Chubb has done, and Nick Chubb is $8,700. I think Nick Chubb is a very good play. Mm-hmm. But I think that Aaron Jones works as a direct pivot off of Nick Chubb if you think that Nick Chubb will be prohibitively popular because that game is so good. So that's not going to get me to more than 10% exposure to Aaron Jones, but I think that's enough to benefit if he goes off. So I think this is just I'm trying to find ways to use similar plays without being stupid. And I think to me, that means, going Ryan Tannehill on the Titans passing offense at times. It means maybe using Aaron Jones and going Jarvis Landry on the Browns side of things as still getting exposure to the Browns. I think that's kind of where I'm going to wind up settling this week, and Aaron Jones could be a part of that discussion. Now, again, the floor here is not very good, and I think that needs to be stated again and again and again because he's going to split work with Jamal Williams, and you are not allowed, I will never tilt about Jamal Williams used on Twitter because I know it's going to happen. And if you use Aaron Jones, you're not allowed to tilt. That's the rule. Yeah. But I think that there is still a path to a good ceiling there. So 10-ish% is the most I can go, but I think I'm going to get there this week.
And I say this for me because I would do this, and I always do it. I'm not allowed to tilt if Aaron Jones has a 3-touchdown game because we know that's something he can do, especially when the offense is that good and the game is, it shapes up where it could be one of those games where he's very involved.
And I think that outside Aaron Jones. I think the Rodgers thing is interesting because if you make a list of quarterbacks on the slate who can put up 30, he's firmly on that. You said he's averaging 27 per game in this sample. That's awesome. And like, it makes sense that if he's good when everyone's out, which he has been, it makes sense he'd be really good when everyone's in. So I think that Rodgers is someone you need to have in your player pool. And it's kind of another game where I'm struggling to find a good bring back option because now we're going to get Zach Ertz back. I can't feel good about Jalen Reagor. Travis Fulgham is dust. Like, Miles Sanders isn't getting work anymore.
Yeah, looking at this team's market shares just across the board, it's all like 18% and below.
And it's a bad offense, too.
I was going to say, it's like the Colts, but Phillip Rivers is like twice as good as the NFL average, and what the Eagles have is not even close. So,
I mean, Carson Wentz has been the second worst quarterback in football this year, ahead of Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
So, I think that there is another case to be made. This is just because I'm a fanboy, and you can figure this out eventually. I think there's a case to be made to make the most relevant sample on this team the last two games. Because the first game that they played together, Big Shot Bob Tonyan hadn't earned Aaron Rodgers' trust yet. He has now. Past two games, who's tied for second on the team in targets, but Big Shot Bob Tonyan. I think there's a case to be made for Robert Tonyan at $5,900 as being a tight end option because I know that he can actually put up 2 touchdowns in a game. So I actually think that Tonyan is a tournament option. I think that this Packers passing offense is very in play, as you said, and I think that I agree with everything you said in this trend.
All right.
Are you going to go Tonyan or no? Am I on an island here?
I mean, it's not like I like him less than other tight ends, but I do like TJ Hawkinson. His salary's 200 higher.
Yeah, Hawkinson is a better median outcome and probably better like 75th percentile outcome.
He's had a lot of yard. Like he's had good yardage for a tight end this year.
I think that Hawkinson has the edge in 50th percentile and 75th percentile, whereas Tonyan passing around like 85th to 90th percentile.
It's possible. I will say if I'm going to play a lot of Aaron Rodgers, which I might, I will just naturally have more Tonyan than I would other tight ends.
Okay, let's move now to the Los Angeles Chargers because they're similar to Green Bay where there are a lot of guys who are healthy now. I know the Patriots can smush some games. Their games have averaged just 44 total points this year, but they've also faced a lot of bad teams, and their offense hasn't always done its part of the equation. They've let up 28 points per game when they face top 10 passing offenses this year, and the Chargers rank 9th there. So I think this offense is super viable despite the Patriots being kind of a buzzkill for DFS. It's also a different offense than it's been most of the season because Austin Eckler is healthy, and Eckler had 16 targets last week. That forces us to shift our view of the offense. That's a lot of volume. And the first thing is that I think that Eckler is the best play on the slate once you consider salary. He is averaging 34.7 adjusted opportunities per game, over 140 yards per game in 3 full games he's played with Herbert. At $7,000, he's at 2x value on yardage alone, which is stupid. So I think you could go at other pieces in this passing offense too, but Eckler's number one. Well, let's talk about the other guys here because the Patriots are 17th against the pass of the full season. We just have to figure out what the volume will look like. Our most relevant sample here is the 2 games with both Mike Williams and Eckler healthy. That's weeks 2 and 12. And in those games, Eckler and Keenan Allen are tied for the team lead in targets at 24%. Hunter Henry is down in third at 22nd%, which is pretty good for a tight end. So that's a downgrade for Allen from his usual. 24%, not his usual mark. But he has 4 of the 10 deep targets in those 2 games, and he sits at he had 96 yards in one of them. So he gets a bump down. But I think he's still in play because he's getting deep volume and getting good enough overall volume, and that volume is efficient too. And I'd expect to be efficient again against New England. Henry doesn't get many high leverage looks, but what tight end does, especially with Travis Kelce not on the slate. So the problem with Henry is that his salary is up to $6,000, which is higher than it should be, but I'm still going to use it because tight end is so bad. It's a game that I like. It's an offense I like. I just think I kind of have to get there. He's over his salary, but I'm still going to use him as a way to phrase that. Mike Williams takes a pretty big hit here. His target share in those games is 11%, and he has just 20% of the deep targets. So if this game blows up, Mike Williams could easily be involved, and you can get to him in game stacks as a result, but his appeal beyond that, at least to me, is non-existent. I think what I might wind up doing is stacking Herbert with Eckler. I mentioned this before. You get the double dip there, and you don't have to worry if one of the other pass catchers go off because you still get exposure to it via Herbert. It would make it suck extra when Joshua Kelly inevitably gets his third rushing touchdown of the day, but still. So I am in on the Chargers here. I think that the Herbert-Eckler stack is awesome, and I think that Hunter Henry, one of the best tight ends despite being over-salaried. I think that Keenan is still in play. Where do you sit on this Chargers passing offense, and are you okay with stacking them with the Patriots on the other side?
I'll start with that final question.
Yeah.
I don't think so. The Patriots are just not.
Wait, so you're saying you're not going to stack the Chargers, or you're not going to use the Patriots as a bring back option?
I'm not going to bring it back.
Okay, sorry, I misphrased that. I meant, are you okay using like Herbert and stuff? I misphrased.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
I mean, I think Herbert is the QB1 at salary, even with New England, very capable of ruining a game. Again, if you look, it plays over the past 5 weeks when the pre-snap win probability was between 20 and 80%. Trying to adjust for garbage time. This game is actually second in combined pace. It's ninth in combined pass rate out of the 11 main slate games. But I don't really worry too much about the Chargers' offense here. The Patriots are just like a middling pass defense, and we've seen Herbert be efficient in those games. The obvious way to go is Herbert and Eckler, like you said. I still think Keenan Allen is very intriguing. The market share is going to come down, but still kind of a fast and high volume offense. Like, I think his target share was 19% last week, but he had like 10 targets. Don't quote me if those are a little bit wrong.
No,
but
those are both right. Yeah.
The target shares went down. They're going to go down, but there's no reason he can't get double digit targets again. So I'm very in on Keenan Allen. I think I'm probably lower on Hunter Henry than you, just because I like TJ Hawkinson more. But I think we're kind of overall roughly on the same page where we like this offense regardless.
If you were to force me to bring it back, and I will bring it back because I'm going to have enough Herbert where I need to, I would go with Jacoby Myers number one.
Yeah.
And I guess Damiere Byrd too, but I don't feel great about Damiere Byrd has 7 targets in back-to-back games. That's not negligible at least. So I would say Myers 1, Byrd 2, but I don't I'm okay not having a bring back with my quarterback, which I don't do very often, but I think in this specific instance, it's okay.
Didn't Byrd have a 0 target game?
He had a 0 target game the first game in the sample with N'Keal Harry back.
Yeah,
actually, I think N'Keal Harry had 0 in that game too.
Because they had seven pass attempts.
Was it actually 7?
No, probably.
But, okay. I believed you.
Yeah, I know. It's just this offense is such a problem. And I kind of alluded to this with the Falcons Saints. The odds that this is a traditional shootout seem very low just based on the fact that Taysom Hill's at quarterback. I actually feel a lot better about that game being a back and forth game than this game, though.
Okay. That's fair. I think that's fair. Let's move now to the game of the week, from a real football perspective, between the Titans and the Browns. They're both, I think, 8-3. This is actually a pretty fun game, and it's fun for DFS, just not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
So talk me through this game. You're looking at this offense with AJ Brown and Corey Davis both being healthy. Yeah,
it's funny because I couldn't tell you any team's record aside from the fact that the Steelers are undefeated.
The Jets are winless.
I don't know records. It only comes in handy for me at the end of the season for playoff implications, and we're not quite there yet. So.
Nope.
So news to me that these teams.
Yeah.
This game is, again, if you look at those recent samples, like I said, this game combines to be 5th in recent pace. Excluding garbage time, but it's 11th in combined pass rate. So this is the football game of the week, but also probably the DFS game of the week, at least to start with. But there are definitely concerns here. It's a wild thought for these two teams to be in this position. But I mean, it makes sense, especially if you look at this from the Titans side, which is by far the much more interesting offense in this game. Cleveland is 30th against the pass based on numberFire's adjusted metrics, and Ryan Tannehill against bottom half pass defenses, just a 4-game sample, 0.44 passing net expected points per dropback. It's basically like league leading level in efficiency on the full season. 26 FanDuel points per game, 3.3 touchdowns per game. I think you and I both like Ryan Tannehill quite a bit this week, without a whole lot of concern, honestly. If we look at their market share since week 7 with both A.J. Brown and Corey Davis healthy, this is where things get more interesting. Brown does lead with 25% of the targets, has 31% of the air yards, but Davis is close behind with 24% of the targets and 37% of the air yards. In terms of targets per game, it's still a low number because this team is very run heavy. Brown's at 6.8 targets per game, Davis at 6.5. But if you weight those for downfield work, red zone leverage, it's equivalent to 8.2 targets per game for Corey Davis, 7.9 for A.J. Brown. That's not to say that I prefer Corey Davis straight up, but it's close. He has more downfield looks per game, 1.8 in the 6-game sample to Brown's 0.8. After these two, it's Jonnu Smith and Anthony Ferguson at 12% of the targets. So again, if there's no Jonnu, Ferguson's definitely in play. But what that also means is it's just a very concentrated target tree at the top. We've said throughout the year that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are somehow going to get half of the team's targets. We kind of have that right now with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. It might not be as fun of an offense, but if the Seahawks regress, it's probably
not as expensive an offense either.
Yeah. And you get the A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf comp. So there's that. But I think A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, both great plays, along with Ryan Tannehill. Anthony Ferguson could be in a great spot. And then I haven't even gotten to Derrick Henry. He's averaged 26 adjusted opportunities per game in this sample, but he's up to 30.3 over the past 3. We know Thanksgiving has come and gone, so it's Derrick Henry season. He has multiple targets in each of the past 3 games, and that is by far the best news for me. Should have had 5 targets last week. He scored on 1, but it was ruled a rush on a swing pass. But I mean, look, the Browns are 26 against the rush based on numberFire's metrics. The Titans are 30th in pass rate themselves over the past 5 games, but we know they want to feature Henry. They're 8th in pace. So I don't really see a whole lot of reason.
Well, I think part of the reason that it's okay to not worry about pace is because usually with runs,
they're 8th in pace.
No, I know, but it's okay to not worry about pass rate. Sorry, because with most teams, running is bad because it doesn't move the football. When it's Derrick Henry running, he moves the football and he can bust off big runs and score in a hurry. I think that's really fun. We've seen a lot of shootouts in Titans game this year where Derrick Henry's gone off. The Tennessee game, or the Texans game, that was a great game. The Colts game last week featured a lot of points on both sides. That can happen again here. I think that also weirdly Nick Chubb is the same thing, where he can score in a hurry, and so I'm not as worried about the run rate for them. So there are situations where these two guys get stuffed and this game flops. That's totally a path to failure. But the median outcome, I think, for this game is probably in line with the total, which is good. So I think that I'm pretty good at this game. Bubble, sorry. The question that I have for you is: you have one lineup, Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook?
I'm kind of leaning Derrick Henry right now, which I never thought would have been possible. But he's getting some targets, and which again we said this on Monday, but why you don't get him some swing passes, even if it's incomplete or whatever. Just try it. But Dalvin Cook's beat up.
Yeah, they said that literally verbatim.
Derrick Henry gets stronger.
Yes, whereas Dalvin Cook is clearly just not. So if you look at each guy's most relevant sample, Cook has a slight edge in adjusted opportunities per game, yards per game, and red zone share, which would make him a good pivot. However, and he'd make him good because he flopped last week. And I think that there is a lot of credence to using Cook as a result of what happened last week. However, this game profiles as being more competitive, which is good for Derrick Henry because I want that back and forth nature. Again, he benefits heavily from that.
Cook will have Thielen back, which should help the offense.
Yeah, that should help the offense. But also, like, I know that not everyone agreed with this statement, but I have more faith in Baker Mayfield keeping the game close than Mike Glennon. I know Mike Glennon played well last week. Kudos to him. He gets DJ Chark and Chris Conley. I got you. Back this week. That's a good thing for the Vikings. That's a good thing for Dalvin Cook that they're back because it increases the odds that Glennon keeps that game competitive. However, if I'm picking a game to blow up, I'm picking the Titans game. So I think it's Henry over Cook. But I think that the allure of I want to keep my exposure to them not even, but like I want to have a lot of Dalvin as a bounce back spot, given that he does have an edge over Henry in all three of those categories.
Yeah, especially look, he busted last week, like that's what happened.
And Henry blew up. So Henry Derrick Henry's roster rate will be potentially 3 times as high as Dalvin Cook's.
It wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, he busted last week. The OC just said he's beat up, and Derrick Henry just went off. So I'm with you.
The Vikings are also in the playoff race. They're not going to use that. Like we saw what Alexander Madison did. Like they're not going to if they can use Dalvin Cook, they're going to use Dalvin Cook. So that's why I think that although I rank Henry higher, I want to have not even exposure, but like. If Henry's at 70%, I want Dalvin minimum 50%. Like, I think that's where I want to be because I think, again, if I have a single entry lineup, I am very tempted to go Ryan Tannehill with Dalvin Cook as a way to deviate from the Henry chalk. Even though, again, I love Henry. Henry's an awesome play. This is not a situation where we're saying Derrick Henry's a bad play. We're over that because his usage is different. And, like, that matters. So, okay. Corey Davis, I think at 61 makes sense. I'm okay using him alongside Henry just because they both get such good usage. Brown, fine. I'm going to stack this game, so I'll get to him. A little over salary, but like whatever. He's amazing. He's like a really good player.
At the salary, who do you prefer?
I mean, Corey Davis, but like that's not – like I don't want to sound down on A.J. Brown because like I'm not expecting him to regress. Like a lot of times when dudes – have insane efficiency, we expect regression. I don't really expect that with him because you watch him and like you're like, okay, this makes sense. Kind of same with Nick Chubb. Like he's an outlier, but like you kind of don't think it's going to come back to earth.
Yeah.
So
Brown's a great example though of what I talked about at the top of the show. Is like just because there's Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, I don't want to forget about these guys who can like really put up big games receiving because AJ Brown can take anything to the house. Like that's what he does.
And also, like a Tannehill Henry Brown stack is fully okay, just because they get Tannehill Henry Davis. Because if you use that, you're getting every single yard the Titans get in a potential shootout. You're getting every single touchdown. If that game shoots out, you're going to be fine. So I think that a Tannehill Henry stack is great. Very okay with that. Favorite Browns bring back option is it Jarvis or Nick Chubb? I feel like it should probably be Chubb, but like Jarvis is good too, right?
Yeah, they're both good. I think Chubb might get a little bit lost in the shuffle because if people are playing Derrick Henry, they probably won't stack 2 running backs. I think it's a very, very doable in this particular matchup. I'm not going to play Kareem Hunt.
No.
But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong really with Chubb or Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
I also, by default, will play Austin Hooper again.
I was trying really hard not to. Like I was like on the Monday recap, I was like, oh, Austin Hooper, like I should probably get off of him. And I'm looking at salaries this week. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to use Austin Hooper again. So please, Johnny, rest up. We need you for the playoffs, bud. Like get that knee healthy.
Yeah, you're Smith.
Irv Smith
all year.
Yeah, Irv Smith.
Yeah.
The couch needs you, bud. Like rest up. Get that groin healthy. We need you. Vikings need you for the playoff push. Stay home one more week. We'll be good. Let's talk about a game with intriguing pace because there are a lot of bad paths to failure for most of the potential shootouts this week. And that forces me to kind of go back to the basics here and go back to the old reliable, which is pace. And there is one game that clearly stands above the rest from that perspective this week, which is the Rams versus the Cardinals. And caveat here is obviously if Kyler's not fully healthy, they may not keep the same pace. but he's one additional week removed from the injury, so maybe we're okay here. But both these teams are in the top 7 in situation neutral pace. That is according to Football Outsiders. The Rams rank 7th. The Cardinals are 1st, and no other game on the slate features 2 teams ranked inside the top 15 in pace, much less the top 7. The Rams started the year off being pretty run heavy, which is annoying, but they've shifted quite a bit of late. In the first 5 games, they threw just 47% of the time on early downs in the first half. But the past 6 games, that number is up to 60%, and that's a pretty dramatic difference and is great for shootouts. I think that's enough to put me on the Rams offense despite their flop last week. We know bad golf games can happen. They did last week, but 2 weeks before or week before that, they lit up Tampa Bay. It can happen. The receivers specifically are really enticing here. Cooper Kupp is $6,600. He has he has at least 25% of the overall targets, deep targets, and red zone targets since Josh Reynolds' role spiked back in week 3. That feels too good to pass up for me, especially with how much the Cardinals struggle against the slot. But Robert Woods has a case even at $7,100 because he's tied with Kupp in red zone opportunities per game from week 3 on. He also gets more deep looks than Kupp. So I think both Kupp and Woods are in play for game stacks, and Kupp more so than Woods as a standalone play. Josh Reynolds at $5,500 would be someone I use as a standalone option, but that's mostly just due to salary. Like, he's fine, but I prefer to get to Kupp, who is just way too close in salary. So how are you viewing the Rams offense here, Brandon? And are you too concerned about the Cardinals offense to use guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk?
So you said that the Cardinals might slow down with Kyler, but he's a week removed. Last week they operated at the 7th fastest pace in those, adjusting for some context there. And it was a little bit slower last week overall, but that number in seconds per play would have ranked 6th on the full season. So I don't think that there's too much to be concerned about there. As for this game overall, I'm a little bit nervous about it. I can't quite put my finger on it. I think it has mostly to do with what we've seen from Kyler Murray, and just not assuming he's at full health. He was not quite himself, last week. I don't think this will matter, but I wanted to look at how these teams have played last year because this is the first time they're playing this year. They didn't target Jalen Ramsey over 38 snaps for him in week 13 when they played last year. He did not play in week 17. I think that's going to be different, obviously, with DeAndre Hopkins, but it worries me a little bit that they might just not try to force a not 100% Kyler Murray into throwing a bunch of targets at Jalen Ramsey, even though it's DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. That's just kind of conjecture, but I think that it's at least worth considering. I think my favorite play in this game, though, is probably at salary, just Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp's awesome. I think that he's one of the best receiver plays in the slate at salary, right?
Yeah. I think so, for sure. I would have, really good. He shouldn't see that much tough coverage at all.
No. Other guys to note here, I think, are Kenyan Drake, who is 66, right? Yeah, $6,600.
Yeah.
He's at 36% of the team's red zone opportunities in his full games this year, and he had 9 red zone target or runs last week. Targets have been up. He's got 5 and 4 the past 2 games, and if this game does feature points, because of that red zone share, Kenyan Drake's probably going to be involved. I will have Kyler under the assumption that that shoulder is healthy. He was limited again on Wednesday, so worth noting that. But if he's healthy, he's one of the guys who can blow up this slate. So I'm going to have Kyler, but he's not going to touch if it's a small field tournament, I'm not going to get that cute. Yeah. But I think in a large field tournament, sure, I'll use Kyler there.
What about Bobby Trees? He should be shadowed by Patrick Peterson last year.
I don't care. Okay. He gets rush attempts, he gets weird screens that he can house. So I don't care. But I think that he's salary. Below. What's that?
I don't love the salary.
Yeah, he's definitely below Cup, like definitely below Cup. But like if you think that Cup will be too popular, then sure, pay it to be contrarian. I think that's fine. Other guy to mention is Andy Isabella. 6 targets for him last week with Larry Fitzgerald sidelined. I think because of when Fitz tested positive, I think he has to miss this week's game too. So I'm not usually an Isabella guy, but like 6 targets last week, that's pretty good. And he provides salary relief in a game that I would like to stack. And again, like if they do, the Jalen Ramsey thing where they just kind of ignore him, Isabella could benefit. So I would say Drake is my favorite Cardinal. Probably Christian Kirk 2. And then Andy Isabella 3. Like, it sounds so stupid, and I'm sorry. I'm apologizing because this is probably a really bad take, but like, I think they're all in play.
It's tough to sit here and say Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins are not your favorite Cardinals, but I think
I was omitting Kyler from that discussion, but yeah, again, he's a little bit lower.
I mean,
because of the injury.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right take. I said I wouldn't play Isabella, because he's going to be the wide receiver 3, but we know he's very dynamic. Christian Kirk has had somewhat of a target floor, at least, in recent games, but I think Drake, Kirk, Isabella would be how I would probably rank them.
What could go wrong, baby? All in on Andy Isabella. Never has burned anyone before. FanDuel Sportsbook is giving new users an opportunity to win big on this Sunday's match between Ryan Tannehill. I'm just going to change this. Derrick Henry and the Titans and Nick Chubb and the Browns. Right now, you have a chance to bet $5 on either the Titans or Browns at plus 2,500 odds. And if you win, you'll make $125. You heard that correctly. Bet $5, win $125. The offer is for this Sunday's game only, so download the FanDuel Sportsbook mobile app, sign up, and make your first deposit to see your enhanced odds today. Must be 21 plus and present in New Jersey, or whoopsies, just kidding. I went on autopilot there. In Indiana, Illinois, or Tennessee, new users only must wager on the designated boost market. Deposit required. Max bonus $125. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Tennessee, call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Let's take a look at what bookmakers are saying about this week. Tied with the Browns-Titans for the highest total on the slate is between the Vikings and the Jaguars. It's at 52.5, opened at 49.5, so it's risen 3 points. Now just 10% of the money is on the over, so it went up, but now there's money on the under.
You know why it went over, though, why it's going up.
Because Chris Conley's back. I know. Don't think I'm overlooking this. The Jaguars' offense getting healthier. Mike Glennon looked good last week. So, do you think they can keep pace? And how are you viewing this game?
I think they can keep pace enough. Mike Glennon was, good last week, but what helps me is that he's getting DJ Chark, and I know Chris Conley back. But he had a 26% downfield attempt rate last week. 10.1 yard average depth of target. And Chark and Conley get downfield work. Like, it should be there's no reason to think that he will not throw it deep this week whenever he has some better options as well. So I think that I kind of like DJ Chark. I didn't get to his, again, I just looked at stuff without looking at his salary. 63, I think, is viable, especially if you're loading up on Dalvin Cook. So I don't know if they'll keep pace to the point where this game's competitive throughout, but I don't think it'll be a blowout from the get-go. So I do like this game, and I actually like James Robinson too, despite being a heavy underdog.
Yeah, Robinson's fine. He's been getting enough targets where I don't worry about that either. In the most relevant sample, which for him is a full season, 26 adjusted opportunities per game, 106 yards per game, and 33% red zone share. It's not standing out at his salary, but it's good enough if you think this game is competitive. So I would say Chark is actually a pretty good option. I'm on board. If he gets into full practice on Friday, that is. That's kind of my thing is I need a full practice by Friday.
Sure.
And if he gets that, sure, I think that makes sense because not only did Glennon do that, but he also said he was going to do that. Like he said, I don't know if I'll ever start again. I'm just going to chuck it and see what happens. And I'm like, cool, man, let's be friends. I want to hang out with Mike Glennon now because that's an awesome mentality, and I hope he does it again. So I think that's good. Is that enough to get you on Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen?
They're like my two enemies because I say the volume's too low, uh, and they still put up big games. I would be much more inclined though to play Adam Thielen at their salaries now.
Yeah. Well, I think the
Jefferson,
good thing too is Jefferson just went off. Thielen didn't play, but Thielen like gets insane red zone usage.
yeah, and that was something I said. I was like, maybe Justin Jefferson just gets that red zone usage, and that's
He
what
did.
happened.
Yeah.
I didn't benefit from it really at all, but I would say Adam Thielen at 100 more in salary is easily the better play of the two.
I think that of the guys in the 7,000 range, I'm probably like, it's a bad range, so take this with a grain of salt, but I feel like Adam Thielen's probably the best, followed by Bobby Trees, followed by Jefferson, followed by Thomas.
I don't know. This is going to be a really strange, weird take, but I might. And I never thought this would be something we would say leading into the season. But I think Michael Thomas at 72 might be a little more. He might be second for me.
Okay, behind
Thielen.
Okay, cool. I think that makes sense. It's a bad range though. Just
he should get peppered. It's a good matchup.
Peppered on 23 attempts. But yes, we already said that.
We'll get 12 of them.
Right. One total that has come down this week is between the Texans and the Colts. Wonder why it went down. Opened at 53.5, but is now down to actually I think 50.5, probably because of Will Fuller. So it's the Texans without Fuller against a full strength but spread out Colts team. So anything stand out to you in this game?
I cannot use the Colts.
Even Michael Pittman?
I cannot use the Colts.
There is a path to a ceiling for Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. Like, you can't say that for most guys in their salary ranges.
I mean, come on. The odds of Michael Pittman. Look, when we celebrate when Michael Pittman gets a 21.4% target share, I think it is telling us a lot.
I mean, right? But like, again, we're talking about Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard has not crossed 7 yards receiving this year. Michael Pittman had 100 like 3 weeks ago.
It's fair. I would say if I had to play anybody from the Colts, it would be Pittman. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to thrust Jonathan Taylor into anything significant because we can't really trust or predict anything that they really do at running back.
Yeah.
I will say, look, we talk about teams struggling without their lead receivers. Yes, Will Fuller is very good. I think Brandon Cooks is at least relevant enough to keep this offense somewhat afloat. I'm not saying it's going to be close to the same, but I think Cooks should get as much volume as he can handle. I'm sure you're in on Jordan Akins, and I would not. I think Kiki Cutie is viable at 4,800. He actually has had 2 100-yard games against the Colts in his career.
Why?
But he had 15 and 14 targets. And this is according to Pro Football Reference. I was like, I said in my notes, because I have him as a player pick, I said, the odds can he get you 100 yards and a touchdown? Probably not. And I was like, I want to check myself because I don't like to say stuff that's dumb and unsubstantiated. So I looked. He has a 100-yard game in his first game against the Colts in 2018. Then in the playoffs, he went for like 103
14 targets
and a touchdown. He had 14 and 15 targets in that game. I'm not saying he's going to get 14 to 15 targets, but
you want to make a bet? It's going to be our worst bet of all time. I can guarantee. This is worse than some of our golf bets.
Okay.
Andy Isabella versus Kiki Cutie?
No, because Isabella can
it's like the median. Like it's a bet. It's straight up FanDuel points.
I know, but like.
Okay, I'm not going to bait you into bet. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, Andy Isabella, obviously, I would think has the easier path to a ceiling, but I think Kiki Cutie has a very good floor and actually a volume-based ceiling if he gets like 8 targets, which who else are they going to throw the ball to?
8 targets, 46 yards. The Deontay Johnson special for Kiki Cutie coming up in week 13.
But he's 4,800, and if he's the difference between getting to like the stud running backs or not.
I don't think Kiki Cutie can burn me. That's why I'm okay ignoring it.
Kiki Cutie or Michael Pittman?
Michael Pittman.
Okay. Like at salary?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I hate players. I hate players who coaching staffs repeatedly do not give chances to. Kind of Andy Isabella, so ignore that part.
What's your realistic target projection for Kiki? Like
probably 8, but like, what does he do? Not 8. That's stupid. 6. 6 targets. What does he do with it, though? Can he burn me? I don't think so.
Sad. I'll talk about him more.
Okay. I think Akins is the better play if you're looking for an angle on no Cook or no Fuller. If you look at Deshaun, like I know that Deshaun splits without Will Fuller is a very tired narrative. However, when he didn't have Will Fuller in the past, he had DeAndre Hopkins. We love Brandon Cooks. We love and respect Brandon Cooks, but he ain't DeAndre Hopkins. So I think that it's a legit downgrade for Deshaun Watson. I think that it's worthwhile to get some Jonathan Taylor, probably similar to Aaron Jones, where you go like 10% because you're kind of making a bit of a leap of faith. But if he gets the same workload he got in the first game before he was out, or in the last game before he was out, like he could go off. But I think the odds of that happens is like 10%. So I'll use 10%. I think that's probably appropriate. The Seattle Seahawks enter the week with the third highest implied total on the slate. They're at 29 behind just the Vikings and the Titans. The problem, as we've discussed, is that we don't know how well the Giants' offense will function with Colt McCoy seeming likely to start. So how are you handling Seattle here?
I think we do kind of have an idea, though, of how they'll function.
That's fair. It's fair and unfortunate.
We've seen a big deviation from Seattle the past 2 weeks, too, and that's like the biggest concern. They're dead last in pace. When you look at those games, between 20 and 80% win probability, 16th in pass rate, again, over the past 2 games. Full season, or leading into those 2 games, they were 24th in pace and 12th, I think, in pass rate. So, like, the pass rate's still somewhat okay, but, like, the pace is very different, and I don't necessarily think they'll have to, like, unleash it.
No, I think the other thing, too, is, like, this is not a surprise that this happened. We predicted it on a recap podcast a couple weeks ago. Like, it's not a surprise.
Russell Wilson, for as much as we like him, has had he's lost a lot of expected points on sacks and interceptions this year. Mm-hmm. Like, they're a much better team at home. So, like, you have that angle, but what are the odds that they really have to, like, he's had, 28 and 31 pass attempts the past 2 games.
And the problem is, like, we can't even use the running backs because, like, Carson and Hyde are just splitting work.
Now the thing is, like, he can put up, like, 26 FanDuel points on, like, 20 pass attempts because he can throw 4 touchdowns on them. That's the scary part. But
would you rather pay up for Rodgers or Wilson?
Rodgers.
100% agree. I think that's where I wind up. And, like, as a result of that, it lowers me on both Metcalf and Lockett. Like, Lockett's way over-salaried. Metcalf is not over-salaried, but, like...
No. Will you have any Tyler Lockett this week?
Probably not. Like, there are a lot of times where I just don't use any receivers in the 7,000 range through the entire, slate. So, I don't know. Probably not. It could be bad, but whatever. I don't... The odds that it kills me in a game where the opposing team might score 10 points are probably pretty low. So, I don't know. I've been trying to do that a lot this year where I just ask the odds, like, what are the odds this person hurts me for not using them? I don't think the odds are that high for Tyler Lockett. So, I don't know.
He's had 3 blow-up games, and other than that, I guess 2, really.
Yeah. Fresh off their embarrassing showing last week, the Raiders have a 27.25 point total again this week. What could go wrong? They're on the road against the Jets, and the reason that I have a little bit of concern here is that it's their second straight trip to the East Coast. They were asking John Gruden about this, and he said that had it not been for COVID, they would have just stayed on the East Coast. Because, like, if teams stay on the East Coast, I don't care. Like, that's actually beneficial. They could not do that because of COVID, but the Jets' defense sucks. The Raiders have been efficient for the whole of this year. They might get Trent Brown back this week. So are you tempted to go back to the Raiders here? And again, noting Josh Jacobs and Nelson Aguilar did not practice Wednesday.
This is a very rare occurrence where a team gets to face the 32nd ranked adjusted pass defense in back-to-back weeks.
Where are the Falcons? Like third now, based on what they did last week.
I think they're up to 30th, which based on how bad they were, like that.
Yeah.
At this point in the year, to move 2 spots from
That's
how
an
bad
incredible
they were,
stat,
like,
by the way.
It's a 1:00 game too.
Yeah.
I do a bad job of like getting away from the spreadsheets and looking at like you said,
situations, travel. Like the Rams against the Dolphins. That was their 4th trip out east in like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And they got stomped predictably.
I do a really bad job with this. But you said they had to go back, and now they're coming back to play 1:00. The Jets are obviously not a team to worry about, but we've already worried about. I should say worry more, but Derek Carr's not really had a ceiling that can torch us. We banked on that happening last week because the matchup was so good. I don't really feel the need. I think Aguilar's fine if you're trying to save some salary. On the other side, I think like Denzel Mims is like good for mini stacks, but I really don't feel scared about not being that in on the Raiders offense overall.
I think the Mims part is good because the Jets offense was terrible with Darnold back last week, but this is a radically different situation because the Dolphins are good. The Raiders suck against the pass. And like Darnold, when he is under pressure, goes full Jameis. And like, I used to say that as like a slight towards Darnold, but now it's a slight towards Jameis. So I should probably retire the Jameis Darnold shtick because like it's just kind of insulting to Jameis at this point. So sorry, Jameis. Not really though. I think that Mims and Perriman are both like not covetable, but they're guys I'm going to wind up using because the salaries are so good. And like, I think there's a path to them doing really well.
Yeah, their path is 7 downfield targets each. Like their air yards numbers, and you can say whatever you want about air yards.
Do air yards feed my family?
Prayer yards. But like, yeah, unless you're Deebo Samuel, like getting downfield targets is important.
Like, do you want a bunch of Greg Wards on your team? No. No.
Target, like depth of targets matters.
Yeah.
Like you can get 3 targets worth of like expected fantasy points if you get downfield work compared to like just targets at the line of scrimmage. So I think Denzel Mims is a very good play. I'm not gonna really have any Darren Waller. He's the one player at tight end who profiles as someone who, like, in theory could kind of burn us, but he's had 2 games with more than 13.3 FanDuel.
Can he burn us?
That's what I was going to say. Is like,
yeah,
you think based on the market shares, but I've said this a lot. He basically has the same volume as Travis Kelce, and he's done half as much from like an expected point standpoint. Like it's just.
Are we thinking that Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce might be good at football? Is that a possibility here?
Yeah, I think that's the take here.
I think we'll have to admit this in Week 13 of 2020 that the reigning Super Bowl champions might just be good. Let's take a look at weather here. The winds look elevated in Chicago for the Lions and the Bears. They're at 16 miles per hour right now. That would be a downgrade of the passing game if it sticks, but like. It's still Thursday. Winds in Miami for the Dolphins and Bengals are at 13 miles per hour. That wouldn't be a downgrade necessarily, but it's worth checking out later. Finally, wind speeds in Green Bay are projected at 15 miles per hour. They host the Eagles. That's worth checking back on later, but nothing worth freaking out about right now here on Thursday. So let's dive into our position-by-position breakdown, starting off at quarterback. Brandon, what a good week for quarterback. Who do you have there?
Yeah, I will say that I like Aaron Rodgers a lot, and I want to make that clear. He's might be my QB2, but I'm going to go with Justin Herbert here at 7,900. Herbert's in a very good spot despite the perceived matchup. I do hate that the Patriots can ruin games, but no quarterback really seems flawless, and we know that Herbert does have a ceiling. This game is second in pace over the past 5 weeks when you adjust for context. Herbert has played 5 games against middle-tier defenses, so the Patriots are 17th. I wanted to look at some sort of sample, so I just cut off the top 8 and the bottom 8 to see what he's done there. 20.8 FanDuel points per game, which is good, but 315 yards per game, just 1.6 passing touchdowns, so maybe some regression coming there. 0.24 passing net expected points per drop back. The league average in that sample is 0.14, so very well above league average against expectation. My second love, believe it or not, is Kirk Cousins. Jim, you can give me your take after this, but Kirk Cousins,
I don't want
7,300.
to.
He's
I already accepted defeat. You're fine.
Okay.
You've
All
won
right.
this one.
All
You're
right.
fine. I've accepted
All
defeat.
right.
You're
All
right.
right. We usually view him as a cap ceiling play, and I get it. I don't think that like 30 points is realistic, but against bottom 10 pass defenses, which the Jaguars are 27th, Cousins is at 0.30 passing net expected points per dropback in 4 games, 18.9 FanDuel points per game, 29 attempts, 268 yards, 2.3 touchdowns. We'll get Adam Thielen back, which is very relevant. He now has had at least 20.8 FanDuel points in 3 of the past 4 games, at least 22.96 in 3 of the past 6, with 2 of those at 26 or better. So again, will he get to 30? Probably not, unless this game really stays close. But he's 7,300. Maybe no quarterback actually gets to like 30 this week, and it's a great matchup. So I'm surprisingly in on Kirk Cousins.
I can't poop talk Kirk Cousins when one of my player picks is Jared Goff, so whatever. My first love is Ryan Tannehill, though, and I think that I had to do stacks for tomorrow on the FanDuel Hurry Up, and I'm pretty sure 2 of my stacks will be quarterback running back with Tannehill, Henry, and then Herbert Eckler. I think they're just the 2 best plays in the slate, so whatever. I'm not usually a Tannehill guy. He's kind of not my dude, but they're facing Cleveland. They're ranked 26th in overall defense and 30th against the pass. I have been tinkering with a formula that projects which offense will be the most efficient in a given week, and it has Tennessee at the top of the heap this week, given their offense, given the matchup with Cleveland, but it also thinks Cleveland will do relatively well on offense, so I'm expecting a pretty tight game here, and that's good for Tannehill, who just needs touchdowns to break in his favor, so I actually do like this game for stacking. I think that Tannehill, it's a 1 quarterback game for sure. I'm not using Baker, but I will use Tannehill, absolutely. My second love is Jared Goff. Sorry. There aren't many high upside quarterbacks in the slate, and so I think that once you account for everything, so I'm more okay saving some salary and using Goff here. He's coming off a really bad game, but just 2 weeks ago, again, he lit up a quality Tampa defense on the road. Now he gets to play indoors, playing on, I think it's actually grass, because I think they grow it outside, but like whatever. He's playing indoors. Arizona just 13th against the pass. It's the second time in the past 8 games the Rams have faced a team ranked outside the top 12 against the pass. The other one was, I actually don't remember. I don't know why. Oh, it was Seattle. Goff didn't do anything there, but like the team was good, so he's fine. I don't think he's a great play. I think that like I'd rather have him over Cousins, but not by a ton, so I can't poop talk Cousins.
Do you want to do a Cousins Goff bet?
Sure.
All right.
So we didn't do the Cutie Isabella, right? Okay. So we have Goff Cousins. This is terrible. Go to running back, please. I hate quarterback sucks. I will say that I also agree with you. You said you like Rodgers. I agree there as well.
I think there's a big 3 at running back at this point with Dalvin, Derrick Henry, and Austin Eckler. But as we mentioned already, Dalvin could be a bit of an afterthought after his down game. The notes coming out about him being beat up in Derrick Henry's big game. Still had 18 carries and 4 targets, 2 red zone carries last week. I think he could still get to 20 points against the Jaguars, who are 30th against the rush. And honestly, there's still a scary ceiling if he gets his usual role, which wouldn't quite bank on, but not many running backs have the just sheer upside that Dalvin Cook has, and the salaries come down a little bit. I do, again, have Henry a little bit higher, but Dalvin's still a great play. My second love for I think we've probably mentioned this guy every single week, and it's actually worked out because he's had a really high floor every single week. But James Robinson, 7,800. I don't love the salary, but I think running back drops off quite a bit the lower you get this week. Robinson's a big underdog, but he's averaged 26.2 adjusted opportunities per game. The Vikings are 19th against the rush. Had 6 targets last week from Mike Glennon. He's had at least 10.4 FanDuel points in 6 straight games, at least 15.9 in 3 of the past 6. It's kind of like a good overall game for the most part, so long as it stays somewhat close. There's a volume-based floor. Volume also leads to ceiling for running backs, and he gets targets. 6-2, 5-2, 6. Like back and forth is what he's had over the past 5 games. My third love is Kenyan Drake at 6,600. I do like DeAndre Swift if he plays, but kind of hard to hate on Drake right now, especially at this salary. 22 carries last week, 4 targets. had 11 carries, 5 targets in his the game before that. So the targets are both season best, basically, the past 2 weeks. Seems like they're using him a bit differently. We know that the red zone role is there. The Rams are 10th against the rush, but they're actually 3rd against the pass. So I think Kenyan Drake has a pretty good path to a floor this week.
I agree. I think the Kenyan Drake is probably, again, going to wind up in my player pool more just because of stacking that game. And I think he's a good play, too. We've generally been higher on Drake than most this year, and I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. My first love is Derrick Henry. If I'm choosing between Henry and Dalvin, I'm going to pick Henry this week just due to game environment because the total for the Titans is actually, it was higher. It's now the same. The spread is 3.5 points tighter here, and those are both positives for Henry. I will say, though, that Dalvin has a ton of bounce back appeal after the bad outing last week. So from a pure process perspective, Henry is the better play to me. So I'll rank him higher, but I do like Dalvin quite a bit. And mentioned I want to have my exposure levels between the two pretty close to even. Also, like, if there aren't going to be a lot of points scored this week, you need guys who can put up 40. Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook are like the two guys who can do that. I would say Austin Eckler can do it, so let's talk about him. I think he's the best play on the slate, period. He has 34.7 adjusted opportunities per game with Herbert and 140 yards per game. He has just 24% of the red zone opportunities, but he was at 36% last week and had 2 carries and 2 targets inside the 10-yard line. He might be the running back to whom I had the most exposure for the entire season, honestly. I think it's going to push that. I will say that I would like Devontae Booker a lot if we get no Josh Jacobs. He'd probably be number 4 running back for me overall. But in case we do have Jacobs playing, I want to mention David Montgomery. He always has some question marks, but there are a couple of things working in his favor. The first thing is that the workload is still good. It has been for a while. In the full games without Tree Cohen, Montgomery's at 25.8 adjusted opportunities per game. That is the most for any running back with a salary under $7,000 in their most relevant sample. He also has 42% of the team's red zone chances. That is 3rd behind Henry and Cook. They should get more red zone chances against the Lions than almost any other team. So I've had like a non-zero amount of Montgomery once this year. This will be time number 2, I think, just because the spot is so good. Do you have thoughts on David Montgomery? Because I don't think we've talked about him yet.
Fine.
Yeah.
Again, I like this game more, so I could let that segue me into receiver. But I actually want to ask: are you going to try to get Cook and Henry into the same lineup frequently, or probably not?
Frequently, maybe not, but like
it's
enough.
Doable.
Yeah, especially if we get Booker. Like
even without that.
Yeah, because like right now I have a lineup where it's just Cook, but like I could pretty easily wiggle this around. The problem is that means less Eckler. Because it probably pushed me down to like Booker and Montgomery.
You can play all 3 in the same lineup.
I will play all 3. And like I said, I think that gives credence to the idea of making combinations at running back and filling in from there.
Would that be your cash game approach? Maybe it's too early to say, but
maybe. I don't think that's outrageous, but probably not. Especially if we get Booker, I don't think it's necessary. But okay. I think there is a reason to think that way, but I don't think I'll get there. But just being realistic, probably not. But like, I want to get there in tournaments.
All right, I'm going to talk about Allen Robinson.
Do it to it.
I like this game a lot. I like Allen Robinson a lot. Salary is $6,900, which is very nice. If I want to build around those running backs that we just talked about in detail, it's going to be hard to get up to the receivers. That's scary, but historically lower salaried receivers, especially guys like Allen Robinson, can put up high-end outputs more easily than value running backs. This is, again, sneakily good game over the past 5 weeks and, context-based situations. It combines for 3rd in pace and 2nd in pass rate. Robinson had 28% of the targets last week from Trubisky, which was 13 targets, 16.8 when you weight them, 5 red zone looks. Volume seems pretty safe for Robinson, so there's a floor from volume, a ceiling from volume and high leverage work, the ability to get 12-plus targets. I also think I love Devontae Parker more than you do, so I want to mention that. My second love is Corey Davis. Talked about this situation in detail, but really like this offense, really like the salary of $6,100, 24% of the targets, 37% of the air yards in the past 6 games with A.J. Brown playing. Davis has a 12.2 yard average depth of target. He's averaging 1.8 downfield looks per game. Cleveland, not the best adjusted pass defense by any means. My third love, Kiki Cutie, 4,800. Obviously, I think you can lump Brandon Cooks into this. I don't actually know where you land with Cooks, but Houston is essentially tied for third in pass rate over the past 5 games. That could come down a little bit. Again, we're not saying Brandon Cooks is Will Fuller, but he's capable. I think that there are reasons to believe in this offense a little bit. Cutie has run 60 and 63% of the routes the past 2 games, according to Pro Football Focus, with just 4 and 3 targets, but it's 2 downfield targets, 4 red zone targets on those 7 overall looks. He has not shown yardage upside yet. That's a problem. But again, those games against it's just coincidence that I don't think it has anything to do with it. But we saw him basically get 2 high volume games in his career, and he's come through on them with 100 yards or more on 14 to 15 targets. I'm not saying he gets 14 to 15 targets, but if they need to throw a lot because they're down, he can get 10 targets. I don't think that's outrageous. So I think there's reasons to like Cutie, but I also like Denzel Mims a lot.
He got that one deep target on Thanksgiving, and I was about to massacre the television when I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Because I had no Cutie because I am vehemently opposed to dudes who the coaching staff blatantly hate. And again, Andy Isabella, whatever. But I was so worried he's going to catch it, and I was so thankful he didn't. So one more thing to be thankful for on Thanksgiving. My first love is Cooper Kupp. He's had a really hefty workload in the entire season, honestly, and it's a high-paced game where I think that he's super undersalaried at 66. He has 26% of the overall targets, 25% of the deep targets, and 28% in the red zone from week 3 on. He has 100 yards 3 times this year. He's done it twice in the past 4 games. I want that yardage upside for a guy who I think you could question that given the lack of deep volume, but he's shown it this year. And then I think he's also due for positive touchdown regression with just 2 receiving touchdowns the entire year. So Cooper Kupp at 66, I think, is with Eckler as one of the best plays in the slate. My second love is Jarvis Landry. If I'm not running it back with Nick Chubb, I think that Landry is the obvious spring back option here. He has 28% of the overall targets in 3 games with Austin Hooper being back. He has 30% of the red zone targets, 30% deep. We finally saw last week that he does have a yardage ceiling with 143 there. Good game to stack. So in on Jarv once again. Also Corey Davis around the same salary. I was going to have Nelson Aguilar as my third love, but he just practiced Wednesday. If he gets into full practice Friday and is good to go, I'll go back to him. But if not, I'll just go to the other side of that game and go Denzel Mims. A 30% target share the past 3 games with everyone healthy. 8 targets last week from Darnold and actually still got yardage against a really good defense, really good cornerback play. Not going to see that this week. So I think that I was out on Denzel Mims earlier this year because the offense was so bad. I know they scored 3 points last week, but when they've had all 3 receivers healthy, they've been a lot better. So I am in on Denzel Mims this week, despite being out earlier, and I will mention Andy Isabella again at $4,800. Let's go to tight end, Brandon. Who do you have there?
I was going to go with 2 low salaried plays, but I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson instead at the top at 6,100. I think he is in probably a better position than any other tight end. Again, I like the pace in this game. I like the pass rate in this game. He's had 10, 8, 4, 7, and 8 targets over his past 5 games with at least 39 yards in 4 of them, at least 65 yards in 3 of them. Doesn't sound great, but that is pretty good for a tight end. In all, he has at least 50 yards in 7 games this season. It's a pretty strong floor for a tight end, especially on a slate with no Travis Kelce. Over the past 5 weeks, he has 8.5 weighted targets per game. That's 4th at tight end behind Travis Kelce at 12.3, not on the slate. Evan Ingram, 9.9, but a huge quarterback downgrade. And Darren Waller, 8.9, but doesn't really do a whole lot with them, and it's almost the same number as Hawkinson for 900.
And Hawkinson has
cheaper.
15 times as many 50-yard games as Waller does.
Yeah. So again, I like the pace in this game. I think Hawkinson is the one tight end I actually feel good about, and I might try to get to him in a cash game format. My second love is Austin Hooper, just kind of because I don't know what else to do at tight end, honestly. He's 5,300. It's a good game environment. The Titans are 24th in target success rate allowed to tight ends this season. His target share is pretty bad, though, 13% without Odell Beckham. I mentioned all the 50-yard games. For Hawkinson, Hooper is maxed out at 57 yards this year. So, again, don't get too overconfident with Hooper, but at least the game environment's good.
That's why we want Ferkser and Rudolph to come through from an injury perspective. My first love is Hunter Henry, and like I said, he is oversalaried, but at least he should get targets. He has 22% in the games with Eckler, Mike Williams, and Justin Herbert. It's not bad. He's at 67 and 83 yards in those two games. Should be a solid matchup here against New England, so I think that Henry's a good option. I also like Jordan Akins. I thought Akins would get a roll bump last week with Kenny Thrills being gone, with Randall Cobb out, but he didn't do anything. He had 2 empty targets. He dropped one in the end zone, which made me very sad. But he also had a rush attempt, and one of the targets was in the end zone. Aaron Reese of the Athletics speculated that Akins could get more work in the slot with Will Fuller being out. So somebody's got to catch passes. Why not Jordan Akins? So $5,200 for him. I think that Ferkser and Rudolph, though, keep an eye on the injury reports for Irv Smith and Jonnu Smith. Let's finish up here with defense. Who do we hate the least here?
Yeah, that's about right. I think maybe this is a week where you try to get to in the 4,000s for your defense, but one that might stand out is Detroit at 3,500. Again, there should be a lot of plays here if the pace holds. Should be a lot of passes if the pass rate holds from these teams in recent weeks. They did play in week 1, and that was actually a Trubisky game. He threw 3 touchdowns against them, which he always does, but had a fumble, threw 2 picks last game against a much better defense in the Packers. Now, the Lions have not had more than 7 points in a game yet this year, no more than 2 sacks, but you're banking on almost 60% of FanDuel points for defenses come from sacks and interceptions. So, it's at least the path to points.
I don't think Detroit is a bad play. That's what I'll say. My love is the Packers. First,
don't make it.
The Packers are $4,100 in facing the Eagles offense, which is inept. It's an 8-point spread. It's been tightening a bit, but still 8 points. The defense's big weakness for Green Bay is stopping the rush, but the Eagles refuse to run. No matter how good Miles Sanders is as a running back, they refuse to run. So who cares? I am also on board with the Lions. I think the Falcons are defensible. There's actually been some line movement towards them this week as well. The Bears are defensible. The Chargers are defensible. I think there are a lot of decent options here, but I will go with the Packers as my number 1 option. That is all the time that we have for today. Brandon, any final thoughts for you on this Week 13 slate?
I think we covered everything at this point.
Yep. Build around your running backs and hope you hit the right combos from there on out. We'll be back on Monday to wrap it all up. That is at 9 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page. So make sure you are subscribed there. We are live every Monday and Thursday at 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then also we have our snake draft tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope channels. Do a snake draft with myself, Brandon, and JJ. And we'll also take some questions after that for those who are watching. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your Week 13 main slate lineups. We'll talk to you once again on Monday to wrap it all up. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.